Okay, I'd like to nominate yourself, Councillor Johan, to be the chair for the meeting.
I second that.
And we will need to take vote on this now.
Yes.
Can the clerk read the names out, please?
So, Councillor Fielding.
Yeah, agreed.
Councillor Moores.
Agreed.
Councillor Chowan.
Agreed.
Majid Hussain.
Agreed.
Dr. Patterson.
Agreed.
Dr. Milnes.
Agreed.
Ben Galbraith.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So good afternoon and welcome to the Virtual Commissioning Partnership Board, held by the virtue of regulation introduced by the government, which have temporarily removed the legal requirement for local authorities to hold public meetings in person. This will enable councils and partners to make effective and transparent decisions on the delivery of services for residents. The requirement for public meetings to be made accessible to the public remains, and the link to the virtual meeting is available on the council website in the usual live meeting link page. If a connection to the member is lost during the meeting will be to be restored. If the connection cannot be restored within the reasonable time, the meeting will proceed, but the members who was disconnected will not be able to vote on the matter under discussion, as they would not have heard all the facts. Should any aspect of the external link fail, a short adjournment may be called of the time up to 5 minutes or so to determine whether the connection can quickly be re-established, either by video technology or telephone. In the alternative, if the connection is not restored within the time, the meeting will be adjourned and any future business will not proceed until another time and date. Any public questions properly submitted to the meeting during the period will be read out by the chair and answered at the meeting. Firstly, can I ask the clerk to ask the members confirm their attendance, please?
The attending members have already indicated, Chair, on the vote. Councillors Fielding, Moores and Chowan, Majid Hussain, Dr. Patterson, Dr. Milnes and Ben Galbraith have already confirmed their attendance.
Okay. And we also have officers in attendance from the council and the clinical commissioning group. When the board comes to take a vote on the report of the approval, each member will be individually asked to state whether they are for, against or abstaining. When a report is for noting, it will be asked if a member does not agree. As with the ordinary commissioning partnership board meetings, once the exclusion of the press and public has been moved at the meeting to enable the board to discuss private report, the press and public will no longer be able to view the meeting. If we can turn now to the agenda, and for the benefit of those members of the public watching, the full agenda pack is available on the council website. So item 2, do we have any apologies for absence?
We have apologies from Councillor Shah, and we also have apologies from Rebecca Sutcliffe, Mark Warren, Dr. Mudyar Gopi and Carolyn Wilkins.
I think it is important to note at this point that most of our health and social care colleagues are under extreme pressure to deliver essential services. So most of these apologies are because they're trying to do the frontline work, and it is noted. Thank you. Item 3, do we have any urgent business?
I've not been notified of any items, Chair.
Okay. And do members wish to make any declaration of interest which has not been noted before? Have we received any public questions?
We've received no public questions for this meeting, Chair.
And item 6, members have before them the minutes of the last meeting held on 22nd of October 2020. Are these agreed as an accurate record? Does anyone not agree, or any amendment observations on those minutes? Okay, take silence as agreement. Item 7, section 75 budget monitoring report. May I ask Anne Ryan to introduce this report? And I understand Andy Cooper also attending. Over to you, Anne.
Yes, thanks. Thanks very much. This is the month 6 monitoring report in relation to the funds pooled through the section 75 agreement. I do recognise that it's rather late for the 6-month report, but however, that's partly due to the timing of the meetings, and the last one was cancelled. So I think the committee will be familiar with the style of report that we have in relation to our Section 75 agreement funds, and recognise that it has expanded considerably since the agreements were first entered into between the Council and the CCG. So we've expanded it from the original Better Care Fund to include Improved Better Care Fund, Winter Resilience Funding, the transformation funds that were available over the past few years, and this year we're including the COVID-related items, given the fact that we're obviously in the midst of a pandemic, and it's the first time that such items will have been included within our reporting arrangements. I think it's important to point out there's still 2 forms of adverse variance within that. The elements of the budget are the pooled aligned budget, the community equipment pooled budget, the transformation fund, and as I mentioned before, the new area this year is the COVID-19 expenditure. The funds are split between the OMBC contribution of just over 74 million and just over 95 million from the CCG in relation to the budget. The variation that I mentioned, 7.5 million, is all through linked through to council resources. So I shall just explain what those adverse variances are. Firstly, we have what we'll term a business as usual adverse variance within the community health and adult social care service within the council, just short of £2.6 million. Some of this is actually offset by budgets, salary budgets, underspending and income that's not included within the Section 75 agreement. And the council itself was reporting at month 6 a £1.7 million variance in the community health and adult social care service, which is largely linked to some of the challenges in care placements, and the council will be undertaking activity to try and bring that back to as balanced a position by the year end. The other element of variance is 4.874 million in relation to COVID expenditure, which is all linked to the council. But just before I move on to that, I'll just mention very briefly, although Ben is here and can highlight the financial position with regard to the CCG. As you can see from the paper, there is no variation reported in relation to the CCG expenditure areas, and I think that's in part due to the fact that the CCG is operating in a somewhat unusual financial environment this year and is receiving funding directly in a more directed regime from the NHS. But I'll just move on to the variation with regard to the COVID expenditure. So in overall terms, the council at month 6 had a variation in relation to COVID of just short of 11.3 million. 6.4 of that was being recouped via the NHS through Oldham CCG, and the overall variance was 4.874, which is reflected in the council's budget. However, the council is receiving separately, we've had to date actually over £24 million worth of funding that's come in from the MHCLG to support the council's COVID related expenditure. We have not allocated that to specific budgets within the council, so we're holding the resources separately. So although within the Section 75 pooled funds, it looks like we have an adverse variance linked to COVID in adults in full, there is some offsetting resources within the wider council in relation to that. I'll finish there and take any questions, but I'll just see if Ben perhaps if he wanted to add anything further from the CCG perspective.
Thanks, Anne. I think just to echo your comments and draw out the points in the report, months 1 to 6, we were being funded for what we spent, provided that was within the rules. At the time of writing the report, that wasn't confirmed, but subsequently we have had all of our allocation requests approved. So we are break even for month 6. There's some of that continuing from months 7 to 12, but mainly NHS is funded through block arrangements, which are being funded at the GM level and then passed down to individual organisations. I'm sure we'll bring some update on the plans for next financial year at a future meeting. I suppose to say in brief that they are still very uncertain, even at this time of year for the NHS, given that a lot of the planning work has been stood down to allow organisations to focus on meeting COVID, a patient need at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. So does anyone have any questions or comments? I can see Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to pay tribute firstly to both Anne and Ben, two extremely diligent finance directors operating in very difficult times. You know, Anne on the one hand, constantly having to deal with very, very many changes at very complex levels of the funding regimes, and Ben similarly, complete ambiguity, no clarity from NHS England for quite a lot of the time about what the funding is, and having to do quite a lot of work around. I think just as a precursor really, both myself and the chair have been heavily involved in a range of discussions across Greater Manchester about the future of commissioning arrangements, along with others on this call and in this meeting, and a precursor to the next couple of meetings of this group, where we'll be challenging very much around adjustments to the governance and the Section 75 scope and scale for the future, which we anticipate being bigger. So it's an anticipation trailer for what's to come, I think, as we start to evolve this group even more than where it's at.
Thanks, Mike. Very good summary and future direction. Anyone else has any comments, observations? John, no? Okay. In that case, the report recommends that board notes 2021 Oldham Care Section 75 month 6 forecast position report. Are we happy to note the report? Okay. Is there any dissent from the? No. Okay. Report is noted. Thank you to everyone for attending the meeting. That concludes the business for this afternoon meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can our colleagues stop the end the live stream?